When police in Ashland, Ohio, first got a distress 911 call about a woman being held hostage in a home, they did not know what to think. Such calls are incredibly rare, especially by the victim herself, and would seem like it was straight out of a crime novel. But unfortunately for the victim, it was not. Instead, police rushed to the woman's aid, only identified in court documents as LS, to save her from her attacker. After police arrived at the house on covert court, what they discovered would chill even the most hardened law enforcement officers. In an upstairs bedroom, a partially bound, bloodied, bruised woman was found alongside her attacker. After securing her and arresting her captor, police began a thorough search of the house. In an upstairs closet in another room, police found a decomposing body that was bound and gagged. In the basement, officers found another decomposing woman underneath a pile of clothing. But who were these women? What happened to them? And most importantly, who was the man that caused all this destruction? The man arrested that day in the house was a homeless drifter by the name of Shawn Michael Grate. When police brought Grate in for questioning, not only did he make a full confession for the attack he had just committed and for killing the woman found in the covert court house, he confessed to other murders too. He even led investigators to another body behind a burned-down house not far from the Ashland home where he was arrested. But who was this man, who seemingly overnight had developed a penchant for hatred towards women? Or was it? Grate was born in Marion, Ohio in August 1976. His mother had just come out of an abusive first marriage and was working as an exotic dancer when she met his future father at a club she worked at. After a whirlwind marriage and subsequent divorce, she gave birth to Grate and his sister. After his parents had divorced, Grate's mother eventually gave up custody of the children to their father. While little is known about his time as a toddler to his teenage years, what has been confirmed is that his first signs of trouble began when he was just 17 years old. His high school sweetheart had become pregnant with his first child during this time. As most high school relationships go, the love did not last, and the couple fought often. His then-girlfriend claimed that Grate was abusive toward her in every possible way, including using physical violence towards her. One day she was fed up with it and tried breaking up with Grate, and he did not handle the rejection well. Instead of letting her walk away, Grate began violently choking the young woman. It's unclear how she got away, but it is known that this was his first arrest. Grate pled guilty to a simple domestic violence charge and would continue on to graduate high school. After leaving high school, Grate became more or less a drifter with no job, no money, and no direction in life. To support himself, Grate would usually mooch off his friends and family for whatever he could get by with. When this support was not enough, he resorted to stealing what he wanted. It was for this that he picked up his first serious charge in 1996 when he and a friend were busted during a residential burglary. After getting a 4-year sentence, Grate served just 1.5 years of it before being released in October 1997. After his release, he quickly went back to his old ways. While he had nothing going for him, that did not stop a harem of women from being attracted to him. As his mother and other female companions would later describe, even from an early age, Grate was a charming and manipulative character. He knew all the right words and all the right things to do to win men and women alike over. However, as countless girlfriends and his ex-wife would later attest, Grate had a dark side. As most cowards are, behind closed doors, they turn into a completely different person. Just like a chameleon, the charming facade and couth smile would melt away into the monster he truly was. No one knew this better than the mother of his second child. While she wanted to remain anonymous for her own safety, this does not diminish her story's impact on unmasking the true character of Shawn Michael Grate. According to her, Grate was physically and emotionally abusive towards her during their several-year relationship in the late 90s through the early 2000s. During the course of their relationship, he would often beat her and isolate her from seeing her friends and family. Even after she became pregnant with his child, that did not stop Grate from beating and abusing her. It was only when she, too, left him that he came back and violently choked her. To him, this was the greatest transgression she could have taken, and after this incident, he was charged with yet another domestic violence incident. But despite this parole violation, he was not put back into prison. Instead, he was remanded back into society when, a month later, he broke into her house again and threatened her over the most recent charges related to the choking assault. Even after he was charged in this incident, a judge did not revoke his parole. Instead, he was released once again, and it would not be until October of 1999 that things came to a fever pitch. Grate's son had been born the month before, and he had requested court permission to visit him. The court denied his request because of his pattern of abuse towards the mother. Angry and frustrated at not being able to see his son, he went after the young mother and the newborn's grandmother with a knife. When Grate approached the trio at the grandmother's home, the two got into a fight over the knife. During the struggle, Grate was cut several times while the mother of his newborn child suffered a severe cut on her finger. It was not until this most recent attack that the courts finally revoked his parole and sent him back to prison to serve the remainder of his 4-year sentence. Even though prosecutors asked to file new charges on this most recent attack, for some unknown reason, the judge found it appropriate enough to just send him back to prison for a parole violation. And that is where Grate stayed until 2003, when he was released from prison. From 2003 until his arrest in 2016, little is known about Grate, probably due to his lifestyle. After being released from prison, according to friends and family, Grate was lazy and refused to find a job. Instead, he continued to support himself through thefts and trying to win over a series of increasingly younger and more vulnerable women. After befriending these women with his charismatic charm, he often lived with them for free. Whenever he got tired of them, or they left due to his violence, he would just find another woman to repeat the cycle. While little remained steady for Grate as he bounced around northern Ohio for the next 13 years, the one constant in his life was his need to batter and abuse women who were close to him. Over those 13 years, at least 3 women testified about the abuse that they had suffered at the hands of Shawn Grate. One of these women was an ex-girlfriend named Christina Hildreth. After meeting Grate in 2005, she was instantly smitten with him. But soon after the honeymoon phase was over, Grate began his usual pattern of beating and controlling her. After suffering years of abuse, things finally came to a head during one beating when he was punching her, and she threw her hand up to defend herself. During this assault, Grate broke her hand, and he then decided to take her to the hospital. When they first arrived, Hildreth first stated that she had fallen down and put her hand out to brace herself. It was not until Grate had left the room that she confided in the nurse that he had, in fact, been beating her. When hospital staff called the police, Grate fled. Grate tried to hide for several days, but after 4 days on the run, he returned to her home where police then arrested him. After first charging him for the assault, police also charged him for some of the other attacks he had done to her she had not previously reported. From hitting her multiple times in the face to choking her, police charged him with numerous domestic violence offenses. Perhaps most interesting in this case was the harbinger of what was to come for his future murders. Christina claimed that despite having 2 other children from prior relationships, Grate did not want the kids living at her house with them. Why he did this is clear. He tried to control every aspect of this woman's life, and he needed to have her all to himself. He did not want anyone to interfere with what he was doing, and it was for this reason that he isolated his victims from any prying eyes. Unfortunately, just like his previous spat of domestic violence charges in 1999, he was let off with light sentences in the county jail and soon released. Not long after the 2010 incident in which he was arrested, he met another local Mansfield woman whom he married in December 2011. But after not even a year of marriage, she filed for divorce, claiming the same type of abuse as other women had befallen at the hands of Shawn Grate. Even after she gave birth to his third child and only daughter, he continued to threaten and harass both her and her family members. After he and his wife divorced in 2012, Grate continued his nomadic lifestyle. He bounced around from place to place, from couch to couch. All the while, Grate continued to rack up a series of nonviolent theft, drug, and DUI-related charges. Because of his long rap sheet, the few times he attempted to find gainful employment, he had to pick places that would look past his extensive criminal record. One of those places was the Ashland Salvation Army, where he met his future rape victim known as LS. According to both Grate and LS, after meeting at the Salvation Army, they both took a liking to one another. They bonded over their love of the Bible and would often eat lunch together during work and then take long walks or play badminton at a local park. According to LS, they actually shared a great relationship, albeit a totally platonic one. Though Grate had asked her for her number and asked her out numerous times, she always politely declined. Grate never seemed to take offense to his advances being rebuffed, and LS said that he never got violent with her. However, all that would change on September 10, 2016. On that day, Grate told LS after work he was going to give her a bag of women's clothes he'd found. Because most of the people in Grate's friend group lived on the edge between homelessness and having a roof over their heads, such a gesture seemed very kind to LS. For her part, LS said she wanted to show him some of her favorite Bible verses as a thank you for the gift of free clothing. Grate readily agreed. Once the pair had gotten off work, he took her to the house on Covert Court. Grate did not own this house, but it was used almost as a mix between a halfway house and a homeless shelter owned by a local religious ministry. Here, people could live there for free while they worked and saved up money to get back on their feet. While many people had lived in the house before, it was unclear who all else lived there now. But on the day of the attack, the only people there were Shawn Grate and LS. Shortly after getting in the home, Grate told LS to head upstairs to his room while he went and grabbed the bag of clothes. LS sat on his bed and read her Bible while she waited. Not long after, Grate came back to the room, but he did not have a bag of clothes in his hand. Instead, he ripped the Bible out of LS's hands and told her they would not be reading the Bible today. Instead, he was going to rape her. After quickly subduing her, he tied her hands and feet to the bed frame. Over the next 3 days, he alternated between raping her anally, orally, and vaginally. He also tortured her by using a variety of objects to aid in sexually assaulting her. When not raping her, he would choke her almost to the point of unconsciousness. However, he would always stop short of killing her. One of the more sickening things he did was carve a heart into her pubic hair. He never admitted why he did that, but according to his confession to the police, they were in love and going to get married one day. Perhaps that was his twisted way of showing love towards this totally innocent victim. During the morning of her third day in captivity, she awoke around 6 in the morning and found him fast asleep. Summoning all the courage and strength she could, she untied her bindings and was able to get his cell phone to call the police. Astonished at getting such a call, responding officers came right away and arrested Grate without incident. After his arrest, investigators began searching the house. In an upstairs closet, police found a woman's body, later identified as Elizabeth Griffin, bound and gagged. A woman, later identified as Stacy Stanley, was found in the basement. But while investigators were still trying to identify these women, police at Ashland Police Station were busy interviewing Grate about the kidnapping and rape. While he readily confessed to the crime, it was what came out of his mouth next that most shocked the officers. Not only did he admit to LS's kidnapping, imprisonment, and rape, but he also admitted to strangling the dead women found in his house. According to Grate, the woman found upstairs was named Elizabeth Griffin. He knew Elizabeth Griffin because she was a roommate of LS. According to Grate, He had been dating Griffin and had been trying to comfort her as of late regarding the plethora of mental illnesses she had suffered. While Griffin was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic with mania, Grate said she had been suffering from depression a lot recently. He did not state why she was depressed, but he did say that she told him all the time that she wanted to die. For his part, he told detectives that he would just listen at first, but the more she told him she wanted to die, that the more he said he wanted to help her determine if that was what she really wanted. While most people would mean that to be taking the person to a hospital or therapy, Shawn Grate meant his help in an entirely different way. To him, his way of helping her determine if she really wanted to die was to choke her. While he said that he choked her several times when she came to him sobbing about wanting to die, it was around August 16, 2011 that he claims he finally choked her too much. He said that after coming to the house again saying that she wanted to die, he took her upstairs and began choking her from behind. He said that during the assault, she was telling God to forgive him for what he was doing. But, unfortunately for Elizabeth, no one came to save her that day. Grate strangled her to death in that bedroom. After killing her, he claims that he then hogtied her. His testimony corroborates the body's condition as it was found with her hands and feet all tied together. When Grate claimed he did it after she died, this seems unreasonable. However, due to the decomposition of the body, no sexual assault examination could conclusively prove she had been raped. However, surrounding her body were several objects that were eerily similar to objects used to assault LS. In regards to the body of Stacy Stanley, a chance encounter would forever change her life. According to Grate, he never knew her before September 8, 2011, when she disappeared. He'd been going to a local BP station when she and her friend had pulled into it with a flat tire. Grate offered to assist her male companion, who had called her son to help change the flat. After her son arrived, he assisted him in changing out the flat tire. Once the two changed the flat, Stacy went inside and bought him a cup of coffee. The cashier later reported that the two seemed happy and cordial with one another. After she bought him the coffee, it's unclear where the man she was with went, but what is clear is that she then left the gas station with Grate. When her car was found the next day abandoned, someone moved the seat all the way back. For a short woman like Stacy, this was not practical. But for a tall man like Grate, it made perfect sense that he drove away in her car. Once they left the gas station, they made their way back to the Covert Courthouse. Here, Grate says that they started fondling one another and kissing. Stacy was attracted to him and wanted to press things further. But according to Grate, she was just a tease who wanted to play a game with them by not wanting to escalate their sexual encounter. Grate became enraged because, in his mind, Stacy was a prostitute. The way that she had spoken with the man she had been with in her car at the gas station had been proof enough to him that she was just a loose woman who liked to manipulate men. Whether this is true or not, and it most likely is, Stacy had every right to refuse to escalate their encounter to actual sexual intercourse. But just like his rejections in the past, Grate became furious that he'd been turned down. As she started to walk away, Grate became angry with her and tried to grab her arm. While Grate said she could have just walked away, she did not, and that justified what he did next. He admitted that he forced her to perform oral sex on him. After the act was done, she was furious with him and grabbed her keys, holding her mace on them. Then she maced him in the face, at which point Grate absolutely lost his mind. He strangled her right then and there in the living room and dumped her body underneath some trash in the basement. Stacy's murder is perhaps the most clear-cut modus operandi of a serial killer 40 years in the making. His utter disregard for women as nothing more than sex objects to be controlled is personified no greater than here. Stacy's rejection of his advances infuriates Grace because, to him, her alleged line of work makes her even less than the already low status he assigns to women. During his police interview, Grate remained adamant that had Stacy just walked away, he would not have done anything to her. but the fact that she retaliated against him for the sexual assault by spraying him with mace cost Stacy her life. Even though Grate had just admitted to 2 murders and the brutal assault on LS, he still was not done. He then detailed a murder police had not even been aware of. Grace told them that about 3 months before, in June 2011, he killed his girlfriend of 7 months, Candace Cunningham. When pressed why he did it, he gave an eerily similar line of reasoning as to why he had killed Elizabeth Griffin. Like Griffin, Cunningham apparently suffered from a litany of mental illnesses, including a horrible case of depression. Grate claimed that Cunningham, too, told him repeatedly that she wanted to die. For his part, Grate said he tried to comfort her and make everything seem all right. However, she was persistent in her feelings about wanting to die. She was so serious about wanting to die that she apparently purposefully overdosed on prescription narcotics numerous times in attempts to take her own life. Grate claimed to be present during these alleged suicide attempts. After multiple failed suicide attempts, Grate claimed he did a mercy killing for Cunningham by strangling her to death in a vacant house and dumping her body behind it. While Cunningham's body showed no signs of sexual assault or any evidence of objects used to sexually assault her, as the 3 women had near them in the covert courthouse, police suspected this murder too had a sexual motive for the crime. Soon after detailing this murder to police, he even led them to the abandoned house and, sure enough, her body was there just as described. But he still was not done. When police pressed him if he had done any other murders, he confessed to 2 more. The next one was his second kill. He claimed that just over a year ago, in June 2015, he had been at a bar with a local prostitute named Rebecca Lacey in nearby Richland County, where Cunningham's body had been recovered. Grate said that he and Lacey had been drinking and shooting pool at a local bar one June night. During the evening, he left to use the bathroom, and upon his return, he said his money clip had been missing $4. Grate said that Lacey stole the money from him, but offered no proof as to if she could have done it. Regardless if she did it or not, Grate said that they went to a nearby building where he'd been employed as a worker to stock shelves in the back of the business. Using his employee access to get inside, Grate said that he strangled her there and then took her body to a nearby country highway where he dumped it. Lucy's body had been, in fact, found along the side of the road, but her autopsy attributed her death to an accidental drug overdose and not a homicide by strangulation. However, Grate did say that she had been using drugs that night. While it is possible that she could have taken a fatal dose of drugs accidentally, LS did say during her attack he had forced pills into her mouth that he said were muscle relaxers. It's not outside the realm of possibility that he force-fed her a lethal cocktail of drugs to render her incapable of resisting him as he squeezed the life out of her. Why the autopsy would not have detected manual strangulation as the cause of death is entirely plausible. The small bone inside each person's neck that acts as a telltale sign of strangulation is not always broken during such an attack. Manual strangulation may not leave as intense bruising as strangulation by a ligature would. Grate said that he murdered each of his victims by placing his forearm around their neck with his hand placed on their mouth from behind in his interviews with detectives in which he showed them. His self-described method would be even less obvious to pick up, considering that his hands and fingers would not leave distinctive marks on the victim's neck, since his forearm and bicep were the parts of his body actually putting force on the victim. Though there were serious doubts as to this claim, there must have been enough evidence as to its validity since, just 2 days after his arrest, police officially reopened the investigation into Lucy's death. Another investigation that got restarted was the murder investigation into a Jane Doe, which had been recovered almost 10 years before, in 2016. Her body had been found near a dump in Marion County. During this time, Grate had been living in the area with his mother since she had been residing, and he was receiving assistance from family for living expenses. Though police had recovered her body long ago and determined that she had been killed from homicidal violence due to manual strangulation, her identity had never been determined. Grate claimed responsibility for this death, stating that the woman had been a traveling saleswoman selling magazine subscriptions. Grate said that she was selling these subscriptions by stating that she would pay for the first half of them. His mother apparently had said she had not been receiving her subscriptions, and Grate took this as the woman trying to go door to door scamming people. In his mind, for this transgression, she was to die. Grate never offered a detailed explanation as to how or why he killed her, beyond stating that he strangled her. While the woman may certainly have been a magazine salesperson, she is more likely to have rebuffed his sexual advances towards her. Whether he raped her or not is unclear, since her body was found a year after Grate killed her. When police pressed him for her name, he said he could not remember it exactly, but knew it started with a D. When pressed further, he said he was 99% sure it was Dana. DNA analysis confirmed the woman's identity as Dana Lowry 3 years after this confession. Few details were made available to determine if the facts of the case matched Grate's confession. Probably because of this, prosecutors decided that the best thing to do was to get Grate behind bars as quickly and as long as possible to ensure that once convicted for the crimes at Covert Court, police would have years to sort out any of his other murders. Because of this, though having confessed to 5 murders and the rape of LS, he was initially charged with 23 counts that included the 2 women murdered at the Covert Court address and the attack involving LS. Police also charged him with a litany of burglaries that he admitted to during his tell-all confession. His defense attorneys really had their work cut out for them. Between a full confession to all the charges, videotape statements, his leading police to Cunningham's body, and the years of corroborating witnesses detailing him as a violent sexual predator, the only defense his attorneys could offer was an insanity defense. After the first court-appointed psychiatrist evaluated him, he found Grate not insane and that Grate had committed his crimes purely for criminal motives. The next psychiatrist to examine him was a man named Dr. Fabian. Dr. Fabian testified that he believed he was legally sane, but that officials should do more testing. Dr. Fabian said that though his examination did not find him insane, perhaps more advanced MRI imaging could tell if his brain was damaged. Such MRI imaging and the doctors trained to interpret such results were few and far between, but he did know a company called Mindset Consulting Group that could conduct the MRI and interpret the results. After getting approval for funds to get the advanced imaging done, the doctor at the hospital where it was done stated he did not have the training to interpret the results. When the court asked Dr. Fabian to interpret the results, he claimed he could just look at some of them and not all of them, lacking knowledge of the rest. When the defense petitioned the court for more funding, this was refused. Because of this, no hard evidence attests to the insanity defense that Grate tried to raise. As a result, he signed a written statement testifying that he gave his consent to withdraw his insanity plea. Now with no defense, the defense went to trial with no witnesses, no evidence, and no other theories that Shawn Grate did all the horrible things he was accused of doing. Though Grate elected a jury trial, it was clear that things were not going his way. Halfway through the trial, he pled guilty to all charges against him except the murder charges, which were the only ones to carry a death sentence. But that did not help him. The jury found him guilty of the 2 murders, and the judge sentenced him to have all of his sentences run concurrently, meaning one after the other. With all the crimes he pled guilty to, he faced a sentence of 90 years to life on those charges alone. For the 2 murders, he was sentenced to death. But that would not be the end of Grate's legal troubles. Almost a year later, in March 2019, he pled guilty to killing Cunningham and Lacey. In September of 2019, after Jane Doe had been positively identified as Dana Lowry, he pled guilty to her murder as well. For these crimes, he received a life sentence without parole for each one. Even after withdrawing his insanity plea, Grate has been fighting his death sentence ever since. Among his claims, one of his most outlandish had to have been his kidnapping charge for LS. Grate claimed in his appeals that because she willingly walked into his bedroom, he could not be guilty of kidnapping her. The Ohio Supreme Court, of course, found this and all of his other arguments without merit. Still, the fact that he even raised such an argument shows that even after his incarceration, Grate's main purpose in life was to exert his control over women. While the Ohio Supreme Court did shoot down all his appeals, his legal team is currently working on appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court. His team's main argument to the Supreme Court has been that because his original trial lawyer withdrew his only viable defense of not guilty by reason of insanity, his counsel was ineffective since he had no defense to offer. While the rule of law allows for all those accused, like Shawn Grate, to be provided with a rigorous defense, lawyers are ethically bound not to lie. Grate's original lawyers did not want to lie by trying to raise an insanity defense that had absolutely no merit. Why Grate raises such claims shows just how much of a coward he is. He was such a hardened killer to prey on vulnerable, smaller women and snuff their lives out, thinking no one would care that they were gone. But unlike Shawn Grate, many people who cared about his victims were gone. In a TV interview shortly after his first homicide conviction, Grate stated that none of his kids or family had visited him since. Hopefully, that will continue until he, too, dies alone and afraid like the 5 women whose lives he cut brutally short.